Let's talk to royal historian and our very own broadcaster, Rafe. Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe, good to see you.
Good to see you, Doctor.
Thank you. I have to say, when it came out that there may be links between the royal family and slavery, dating back 500 years, I'm not remotely surprised.
Yes, we have to remember, of course, at the time this document came out, of course, we were still burning witches at the stake. You know,
exactly.
These were very unenlightened times. But, you know, the king is in a very unenviable position. It's important to remember, of course, His Majesty isn't just King of Britain. He's King of 13 other Commonwealth realms. Several of those are Caribbean nations where the issue of slavery and reparations is very emotive and very powerful.
United
and there's
Kingdom
also a very
Germany
strong...
are together providing leadership
yes.
to
See if we
secure
can reduce the
our
sound on that a little bit, Rafe.
And there's also a very strong Republican lobby in those countries. And also, more broadly, the king is head of the Commonwealth, where the majority of member states are African and Caribbean countries. So it's a question of delicate diplomacy in order to be seen to be aware of the issues of slavery and recognise the historical past. But, of course, His Majesty has never apologised about it, and that's very important. He and the Prince of Wales have expressed their deep sorrow over the issue of slavery, but they've stopped short of apologising because apologising never achieves anything. It simply emboldens those who want to actually undermine the monarchy and undermine Britain. And, of course, nobody alive today has any responsibility for slavery. The royal family of today is not culpable for the sins of the past, and there's no reason at all why they need to go down that path. But what this does, actually, though, it fuels this myth that somehow the monarchy's wealth is based upon slavery, that Britain's wealth is based upon slavery, the empire and the Industrial Revolution were based on slavery, which is absolute nonsense, actually. I mean, this document refers to 1,000 shares in 1689. That is about £163,000 today. That was pocket change for King William III. We're not talking about vast sums of money. But if you read The Guardian, for example, yesterday, you would think that Kensington Palace, which was built at the same time, was built with the proceeds of slavery. That wouldn't even pay for the paint for one room at Kensington Palace. There's no connection between the two.
If we're honest, Rafe, I mean, literally everybody of a certain class was connected to slavery then. I mean, it's such a long time ago now, and we seem to be navel-gazing about the past when there's so much more we should be concentrating on in the future. And while I get going into the archives and releasing historical documents, do you think by even doing that, King Charles is actually lending more weight to the Republican cause to abolish the monarchy completely?
Well, that's my point, actually, yes. If you do start to apologise, then, of course, you open the door for reparations and you fuel the race lobby, the Republicans, all of those people who make them their fame and fortune by trying to undermine Britain, the monarchy, and actually the West more broadly. And I'd have more time for those people who campaign on this issue if they were equally vocal about the fact that there are 10 million people living in slavery today in modern Africa. 7 in every 1,000 people are there, and yet I don't see any protests outside the High Commission of Nigeria, outside the embassies of Chad or Cameroon or Sudan, and I would have thought that the lives of people today, saving them, is much more important than revisiting past travesties from 200 years ago.
But the king is between a rock and a hard place, isn't he? Although there are concerns, you don't want this to necessarily open the door on reparations and things like that. Because this is all down to, you know, he granted access to a research into royal archives and all the rest of it. If he hadn't granted that access, then there would be claims of just trying to cover it up, wouldn't there? So, I mean, he sort of had to allow this person to do the research.
Well, yes, and I have to say, of course, as a historian, we want to have full access. You know, historians love the idea of being able to go into archives, as long as there's no ulterior motive behind those who are actually doing the research. And that's a lot of the problem around this debate. You have a huge amount of historical ignorance between a lot of the loud voices on this issue on the one hand, but there's a great degree of historical deceit and obfuscation by academics as well, trying to portray, as I said before, that the monarchy is somehow built upon the proceeds of slavery, when, as we know, at the time, say 1770, the peak of the slave trade, around 3% of Britain's capital formation was involved in slavery. That's equivalent to the beer industry, hops and barley and brewing. No one has said that beer actually fueled the Industrial Revolution or the wealth of the monarchy, and yet it was the same amount of slavery.
Rafe, we're out of time. However, I just want to ask, because it's the 7th of April, isn't it? On the 6th of May, so we've got a month to go. to the coronation. Are you gearing up for it?
I can't. Yes, I'm getting my beauty lotion on because I won't be getting much sleep over that period, and God knows I need a lot of it, don't I?
Have you got your invite?
Well, my friend actually designed the invitation, and I was very pleased to see that. And yet, I don't know if he's got the invite, even though he designed it. So.
Oh wow! Oh well, there you go.
Oh my gosh!
Rafe, really good to see you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much indeed.